Tonight, on the Phenomenon Radio Show, radio broadcast veteran Race Hobbs, one of the world's most high-profile military experiencers, John Burroughs, researcher and author James Warrow, and filmmaker, YouTuber, and truth stalker, Professor Simon. Washington, D.C. Some advances in tech historically can be published, such as a press release on Friday, August the 22nd, 1980. This is what is known as stealth technology. A statement by Secretary Harold Brown is quoted as saying, "I am announcing today a major technological advance of great military significance. This so-called stealth technology enables the United States to build manned and unmanned aircraft that cannot be intercepted with existing air defense systems. This achievement will be a formidable instrument of peace. For 3 years, we have successfully maintained the security of this program." This was due to apparent advances by the Soviets, and the West needed to be more than one step ahead of its rivals. Advanced weapons tech during the 1970s and 80s spoke of Soviet advanced weapon concepts. The released paper goes on to say, quote, "Soviet research that will provide necessary background knowledge for several advanced warfare techniques is being actively supported. Because of the nature of this research, 3 new concepts for defense appear suspect. The use of high-intensity electromagnetic radiation detected to an aerospace target, the use of beams of particles accelerated to relativistic speeds and directed to an aerospace target, and the use of plasma bodies generated and accelerated to a target or generated for use as a coupling mechanism to facilitate destruction through concentrated electromagnetic energy." Close quote. Plasma and electromagnetic energy were also discussed as a part of a UK Ministry of Defense report titled Project Condign, released through a FOIA requested by Dr. David Clark many years later. Even as early as 1979, Alan C. Holt submitted a paper to NASA titled Field Resonance Propulsion Concept, which proposed a method we hear today, as in studying radiation effects on humans from encounters with UFOs. Quote, "Effects on minerals, plants, animals, and humans should be studied to gain insight into the radiation emitted by UFOs. Effects on humans such as burns, symptoms of radiation sickness, and other body changes should be thoroughly investigated by physicians. Regressive hypnosis should be used extensively to obtain technologically valuable information from UFO close encounter participants. 3-dimensional models of the exterior and interior of UFOs should be made for cases which are significant from a technological point of view." Close quote. Dr. Green told John Burroughs that he learned about what damaged his heart from research conducted at Los Alamos National Laboratory, best known for its part in the creation of the first atomic bomb. Dr. Green explains that, quote, "Broadband non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation caused the injuries. The RF is identified in a dozen classified and half a dozen unclassified studies on cardiological and neurological injuries, not thousands of reports. Nearness to the UAP radiation and length of exposure are 2 important factors that determine the extent of the injury in human bodies and manipulation of minds." Close quote. We can also verify SRI interest in non-ionizing radiation from a February 1980 40-page report titled On the Interaction of Non-Ionizing Radiation with People. Keywords include blood-brain barrier, human absorption, thermal effects, experimental data, theory and data review. Non-ionizing radiation includes the spectrum of ultraviolet or UV, visible light, infrared light, microwave, radio frequency, and extremely low frequency called ELF. Lasers commonly operate in the UV, visible, and infrared frequencies. This is the first time on record that injuries and possible connection to UAP exposure have been discussed publicly from a senior source pertaining to a known serviceman involved in a well-documented UAP case. A more recent release of documents that were part of an advanced aerospace weapon systems application contained the following information titled Anomalous Acute and Subacute Field Effects on Human Biological Tissues by Dr. Christopher Green. Preface and summary. Several years ago, 3 previous fit and active individuals experienced an anomalous aerospace-related event. Within 72 hours, they suffered medical signs and symptoms. These included almost immediate arrhythmia, heat and redness over exposed skin, and varying degrees of the following as a function of their body surface exposure times: fever, pain, headaches, numbness and paresthesia, malaise, diarrhea, loss of hair and alopecia, skin eruptions and boils, cardiac palpitations, beginnings of what were to become chronic headaches and symptoms of insomnia and other sleep and dream disturbances, moderate to occasional severe anxiety and insomnia. 2 of the persons also experienced photophobia, dry and scratchy, stinging eyes, and extreme inflamed bloodshot scleria with soft tissue swelling of the eyelids. 1 of these 3 experienced moderate blood dysplasia and signs of radiation illness, and over several years developed signs of malignant transformations. Extensive but controversial investigations reveal the 3 men were subjected to an accidental exposure in a near field to broadband ultra-high radio frequency mixed radiation of RF non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation and microwave energies centered at about 785 megahertz. The evidence discussed includes scientific material that has been peer-reviewed, contained in recently declassified government documents, and early emergent clinical medical analysis also underway in companion research studies. Based on historical cases, humans have been found to have been injured from exposure to anomalous vehicles, especially airborne, and when in relatively close proximity, the primary mechanisms of the injury are related to electromagnetic radiation field effects. The biophysical characteristics of the injuries are well understood. The energy-related propulsion systems are not well understood. The potential deployment of systems is thus important to understand. Sufficient incidents, accidents have been accurately reported and medical data acquired as to support the hypothesis that some advanced systems are already deployed and opaque to full U.S. understanding. Amongst the most important pathopsychological effects are heating and burn injuries, ionizing and non-ionizing, thermally induced neurological effects of cognitive central nervous systems, neuromuscular central and autonomic nervous systems, sensory peripheral nervous systems of the neuropsychiatric, neuroendocrine, auditory, cranial nerves 7 and 8, communication and disabled effects, noise and central neurocognitive analysis of clinical diagnostic codes, together with environmental conditions observed during anomalous events, are clustered in a meaningful way. Whitehall, UK. Declassified documents show the MOD changed from the use of the term UFO to UAP in June of 2000. The next reference to UAP should be considered when reading Project Condign. Based on reported and observed effects, Condign went on to describe what was undoubtedly some of the damnedest and most fearsome highly localized weather you'd ever want to see. Generating electromagnetic anomalies, forcing pilots to take potentially catastrophic evasive action, subjecting observers to radiation exposure, and even provoking hallucinations and lost time events. UAP, reported Condign, even held promise for weaponization. The relevance of plasma and magnetic fields to UAP was an unexpected feature of the study. It is recommended that further investigation should be undertaken into the applicability of various characteristics in various novel military applications. With respect to the possibility of the use of plasmas for military applications, such as target radar signature control and antennas, it is noted that the implications have already been briefed to the relevant MOD technology managers. Project Condign was classified secret UK eyes only, with only 11 copies having been made, most of which went to intelligence personnel. Bear in mind that at the time the document was written, secret was defined as information the compromise of which would, for example, raise international tension, damage seriously relations with friendly governments, threaten life directly, or cause serious damage to the operational effectiveness of security of the UK or allied forces, or the continuing effectiveness of highly valuable security or intelligence operations. Project Condign's final report contained a statement that the well-reported Rendlesham Forest Bentwaters event is an example of where it might be postulated that several observers were probably exposed to UAP radiation for longer than normal UAP sighting periods. What they encountered, and some ammunition in their own respective fights for justice. There are a number of intriguing references to technology acquisition, including from the author's working notes. Quote, try to discover whether any scientific facts can be elicited from these phenomena, whatever they may be, which might be made use of by the UK for military purposes, close quote. In particular, propulsion, stealth, and novel electromagnetic technologies are of particular interest. Project Condign's final report ran over 460 pages, written by a scientific and technical intelligence specialist, writing for an audience of similar specialists, and the material simply wouldn't be comprehensible to most members of the public. Additionally, several key parts of the report were redacted, as the material is still classified and/or sensitive, and many of the supporting papers that led to the final report are similarly redacted or are outside the scope of the Freedom of Information Act. The head of DI-55 ordered the report's author at the outset to focus his attention only on the possible threat to the UK and technology acquisition, and not X-Files activities such as alien abductions. The report's author, Ron Haddow, refers to his own sighting of aerial phenomena whilst flying with the RAF in the 1950s. He does not reveal any further details in the files. During the 1980s, Ron Haddow advised on the sensor aspects of the Pentagon's Star Wars missile program. Until his retirement, he worked at GEC Marconi, the premier electronics company in the UK, now part of BAE Systems. His expertise lay in electronic warfare, radar, air defense, and guided weapons. According to Dr. David Clark, quote, "The Condign report was Haddow's swan song after a lifetime in the world of secret intelligence. His own words reveal that he was aware that it would become a source of speculation and debate for decades to come. But for now, at least he remains in the shadows." Close quote. Past that, the contents of the memorandum get murky, due in large part to the way it was written. However, there are a few key phrases that can be pointed to as identifying the real phenomenon. Key among them, the sentences in the executive summary state that unidentified aerial phenomena exists is indisputable. Credited with the ability to hover, land, take off, accelerate to exceptional velocities, and vanish. They can reportedly alter their direction of flight suddenly and clearly can exhibit aerodynamic characteristics well beyond those of any known aircraft or missile, either manned or unmanned. The MOD admitted that the phenomenon presents itself as having exceptional capabilities, some of which match their second layer of Vallée and Davis's taxonomy of high strangeness, which they label as anti-physical effects. Correlating a number of these effects, along with a number of effects in Layer 4, physiological effects, with effects observed and reported at Rendlesham, leads one to conclude that the author did, to a degree, consider the actual phenomenon in the crafting of the memorandum. Could page 5 of the paper, written by Dr. Harold Pudoff, allude to part of what may be part of a bigger picture in regards to what was described as observable anti-physical or physiological effects when encountering UAP, as described by Jacques Vallée and Dr. Eric Davis in their paper Incommensurability, Orthodoxy and Physics of High Strangeness, a 6-layer model for anomalous phenomena. The paper is called Advanced Space Propulsion Based on Vacuum, Spacetime Metric, Engineering by Dr. Harold Pudoff, page 5, Time Alteration. In a space-time altered region, time intervals are seen by a remote observer to vary as relative to the remote observer. Near a dense mass, for example, and therefore time intervals are seen as lengthening in process to run slower, and in the case of a black hole, stop altogether. One consequence of this is the redshift of emission lines. In a space-time altered region, time intervals are seen by a remote observer to vary as relative to the remote observer. Near a dense mass, for example, and therefore time intervals are seen as lengthening and processes to run slower and, in the case of a black hole, stop altogether. One consequence of this is the redshift of emission lines. Should such a time-slowed condition be engineered in an advanced aerospace application? An individual having spent time within a temporarily modified field would, when returned to the normal environment, find that more time had passed than could be experientially accounted for. If uninformed about the metric engineered characteristics of the environment from which he emerged, the individual might be inclined to interpret the experience in terms of a missing time, Rip Van Winkle effect, as it were. Conversely, for an engineered spacetime associated with advanced aerospace craft, time flow within the altered space-time region would appear sped up to an external observer, while to an internal observer, external time flow would appear to be in slow motion. In this scenario, a close approach to such a craft could leave one with the impression of, say, a 20-minute time interval, whereas only a few minutes would have passed in real or normal or exterior time. A corollary would be that within the space-time altered region, normal environmental sounds from outside the region might cease to be registered, since external sounds could, under these conditions, redshift below the auditory range. Considering the watches on the airmen on night 1 were 45 minutes behind after the event, along with the apparent missing time that could only be described by the airmen, did the area of Rendlesham Forest somehow experience a space-time altered region in 1980? Is there a gravity anomaly in the area of Rendlesham? Could this have played a part? Could a gravity anomaly in an area help create a time dilation that might explain some of the effects experienced by some of those involved in the Rendlesham incidents? Gravity can warp time? Could a gravity anomaly also produce such effects under the right as yet unknown circumstances? Eric Weinstein, who has a PhD in mathematical physics from Harvard, stated on the Joe Rogan Show on February 22, 2023 that 1. You have to realize that you may not be smarter than the thing you are studying. If we study ducks by hiding in a duck blind and using infrared cameras, whoever is studying us is hiding behind something we can't detect and using technology we don't have and is smarter than we are. And number 2, the discussion of micro UFOs, which seem tiny from the outside but expand so much larger when you are inside, are instances of space dilation, where there is more space inside what appears to us to be a given volume. Space and time are the same thing. Time dilation is where there is more time inside something that there appears to be from outside the object. If you could get your hands on the levers to change the metrics, space, time. This is what Hal Puthoff calculated. If you could get your hands on the levers and engineer a space-time metric propulsion system, here are the kinds of results you would see. And that wraps up the first half of this 4th edition, and now it's time, as we always do, bring on the Phenomenon Radio team for our post-show panel discussion. First, I want to introduce our researcher, author, James Warrow, who does such a wonderful job compiling so much of the information that we deliver to you. James, welcome to the program.
Good evening.
And then also want to bring in our film editor, film maker, and like resident truth stalker, Professor Simon. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And last but not least, as introduced, one of the most high-profile UAP experiencers walking alive today on the planet Earth, John Burroughs. John, welcome to the program. In this edition of the program, we covered an expanse of the behind the curtains. You know, when I was narrating this edition, I had this, you remember the old Wizard of Oz movie, and how once they got to Oz and they got to the fortress and they made their way inside and they were, dealing with Oz himself. And then sort of like, you get to the part where the curtain comes back and there he is. They discover, wait, all this time we thought that, we were dealing with, something far greater, far bigger, far more astounding. And then you pull the curtain back and you're dealing with a very shriveled up version of a man pulling the levers, and sort of, torquing us all around. And I've got a few questions that I'm going to pose to you guys because we've only got a short amount of time, in this program, compared to normal programs that we do, but we have reduced the show somewhat. So I want to get right at it. But just that the research that this team has put together, and James, again, and as always, hats off to you for the volumes of work that you and John have done. Sits back before the original Phenomenon radio program. You guys have been digging into this, and I've just been able to ride along with you, contribute little sprinkles of things here and there, but you guys really are the heart and soul of that drive into that the nucleus of that information. And what you guys deliver in this show is astonishing, because like I said, when I was reading this, there were times where I'm stopping and I'm having to go back and I'm like, did that read right? And then I find myself, I've been sitting here 15 minutes over one sentence thinking, I start out thinking, you guys, that did I read this right? And it goes into, holy shit, did he really say that? And this is talking about, specifically, I think it was the Kit Green, what he wrote on Above Top Secret Live and all of that. And, because when you're able to farm some information from somebody so well placed and deeply planted in the intelligence community and one of those specific branches of a massive community of intelligence and agents and all of that, and then you get horse's mouth. I tell you, what you all just watched and heard in this show has to have you your wheels turning if you're a critical thinker. If you didn't know about that website, you didn't know about that posting from Chris Kit Green, you have got to be really worked up right now. And and then how they keep these secrets. A lot of work goes into secret keeping and intelligence and counterintelligence, and how things get out, and what resources are going to be used on running this down and this down and this down, and that's a whole nother game. So what, Professor Simon, let me just bring this to your table first. The U.S. Air Force, we talked in a previous show and this one about the stealth and how it was Marconi and them and all were developing all of this stuff over there years and years and years ago, and this development of stealth itself, and these secret programs might be how they might be kept, and are they still utilizing those ways to keep secrets today? Like, there's a lot of stuff out there that they have to protect from the enemies of freedom and liberty around the world. How did the U.S. Air Force keep the stealth program so secure?
Race, You've just absolutely nailed it, because it is the Wizard of Oz, is the man behind the curtain. Ignore the man behind the curtain. I mean, yeah, things have to be kept secret. We have to have national security, and maybe us, the general public, don't need to know. And so look at the history, just as John and James are doing in this amazing series of shows by putting modern UAP in context of what's actually happened. And I think one of the biggest clues is the word misinformation. I think that stealth was deeply secret. It needed to be kept secret. Planes, the Have Blues, the Marconi metamaterial skin. Wow! I mean, that was around long before it was eventually revealed to the public. And so, when people saw the weird thing in the sky over Area 51, over Bentwaters, over anywhere in the world, it's a flying saucer. And it's a standard, I think, get out clause that has been overused and is still being pulled. Look at actually Rendlesham Forest. I mean, incident. We had it was aliens. It was the lighthouse. It was an SAS raid. It's all about distracting people from the real story. And race, another great point you made. Maybe we need to do that. But as truth seekers, as somebody who wants to actually understand what's happening, but not reveal national secrets, do it in a respectful way, we want to really get to the bottom of stuff. And possibly what we're seeing today isn't what is being presented and how the media are being manipulated, who lap up flying saucer stories. UAPs might have an actual prosaic answer. They might well be technology that has been man-made. Right. And I think we need to explore it, but never give away national secrets. But if we can find out through James and John's fantastic research that there are programs, there are universities working on that kind of stuff, maybe, just maybe, that man behind the curtain will be revealed.
That would be a wonderful surprise in my lifetime, for sure.
Right.
So many fantastic people, colleagues of all of us that have come and gone along the way. Those of us that have, I want to say, dedicated some, if not a large portion of their lives to the truth about the existence of other intelligent life that are visiting Earth or from Earth, here on Earth. It's a tough reality when we lose them, when they go, when they pass over, when they move on, and they didn't get the confirmation, the disclosure, and or however you want to call it. It's tough to see that, but in our quest for the truth, it's a mighty effort, because you come upon the frustration of the possibility that we have been duped. And that can be horrendously discouraging. I mean, it can knock you right in the stomach. It can kick you right in the goods. You know what I mean? And it can derail you from the mission that you started, the path that you embarked upon, and how we're going, the direction that we're going in all of this. It's just it's really enlightening to me to be able to open up the idea that we're on the same track heading in the same direction for the same answers, but we're starting to uncover these layers of
Right.
intelligence operations that have light shined on them now, that have made it possible for the civilian world to be able to come closer to understanding, why they do it and what for and when and, to what end. And, that brings me to the question that I'm going to pose to James. Did the Soviet Union have, DEW weapons? Did they have those DEW weapons and plasma research during the Cold War? And James, you're the guy that, dives into those fine form details that would have the answers to that question.
Yeah, well, the Soviets at the time were doing everything with along with directed energy weapons and experiments with lasers and all kinds of things. And some of the information that was being gleaned from the United States intelligence was that they were creating even things such as a generation of plasma bodies that could head towards a target, accelerate towards a target, or actually be used to facilitate, destruction of certain things. And it was when we was discovering, some of the energies that could potentially come off this type of, call it weapon. Some of it kind of leads to similar sort of descriptions that were in the Project Condign that was released, obviously, 2000s in the 2000s. And to think that was this was being recognised in 1976 at the time, and then thinking about some of the issues where we had balls of light near nuclear sites and things like that, led me to investigate and wonder whether or not some of this was the same type of, energy, whether or not it was man-made or whether or not it was something that was unknown that was doing similar things. And later on through the research, it was I was researching a lot more about plasma and its effects. And then when they dropped the Dr. Green, his statement dropped on ATS, that was just unbelievable, because there was some aspects within there that he describes similar sort of research that I was looking at, and also Andrew Pike. I a little story from Andrew Pike as well, if no one's read the great book that he wrote. It was, he states, in Russia, years ago in Russia, they used to get around their street lighting. They had problems with electricals and things like that in certain areas. They didn't have enough power and stuff. And so what they tried doing was cross beaming two microwave beams, different sort of regulation, that would generate an interference at the crossover and create a ball of light that would give a lot of coverage over small areas, or little small towns and stuff like that. But the only problem was that when a plane used to go across, sometimes this ball of energy used to become somehow detached and fly towards an aircraft. I think Andrew Pike described it as, almost as if this energy was trying to earth itself somehow, in the nearest thing that went past. And again, that goes back to some of the references to what was made by the GMAIC in 1976, discussing similar, being able to generate or accelerate a target, a plasma, basically, and that's where a lot of the research went, obviously, a little bit dark, I believe, after that as well, because of such, the implications of using such things, Yeah. Sorry,
Well,
I was.
that's heavy. That's heavy.
I think it's really James is that's really fascinating. From my background in doing physics research, it seems that if you go all the way back to Nikola Tesla and his so-called death ray, which he actually hated the term, he called it a teleforce, which was years ahead of its time as a directed energy weapon, definitely. It was probably a particle accelerator. Supposedly, the United States and his other chosen ally, the United Kingdom, turned it down. But the one country who actually gave him money, and he wanted real money for the death ray, was the Soviet Union. And there are reports that they were the ones that actually went ahead with the Tesla ideas way back. You're talking, late 40s and 50s to actually come up and make it work when either the US and the UK were doing it secretly, but there's definite. You can actually see plants that were built in Russia that built directed energy weapons. So, they've always been interested in this stuff, and I think James has really revealed that.
I agree. Even on the shallow end of this conversation, and I have to go back to the shallow end where I live in it. Because I'm not near as deep as James and them. But, I remember thinking back in my research 25 years ago, there was this big conversation about, why would alien civilization light up the sky like, just why would they present these light shows and this and that? And I remember actually doing some scientific research about what could be what we have come to call the coronal discharge from beneath these objects or from the perimeter of these objects, and that is these plasma glows that is created from the static discharge from the electromagnetic engines or power plants or whatever it is that's driving these things, could actually create these plasma expulsions that that are what we see as light, like a beacon on a lighthouse or a light flashing on an airplane or whatever. It's really plasma, and
let's not
to a plasma conversation today,
right,
that goes far and away beyond anything I could have ever imagined 20, 30 years ago.
But let's not forget that plasma itself is just the fourth state of matter, solid, liquid, gaseous, and plasma. And in fact, 97% of our universe is in that fourth state. And the magic thing about plasma, it has lots of incredibly interesting properties, but it has one unique property which suddenly opens an amazing door, and that is it's magnetic. It's particles that are now separated, the electrons, which are negative charge, and the positive charge nucleus of atoms, which now can be redirected. And it's incredibly common. I mean, you get plasma in your microwave. A fluorescent tube is a plasma device. And I think we see plasmas all over the place, but it's strange to us mere mortals because we don't normally come across plasma in our everyday life. We live in this planet where everything is relatively stable. Things don't change. They don't float around and they're not magnetic. But as soon as you live in the big universe, plasma, well, that's everywhere. It's everywhere. Yeah.
It is. It's all over. It's all around us. In this episode, and I want to get to you, John, here. In this episode, the sort of reminded revelation of this article or this post that Dr. Green made, and we, even recently had to validate through him, if he did indeed write that, and maybe you are the one to come to. There's no doubt that you're the one to come to about Dr. Kit Green and he studying health effects on UAP exposure. You're the guy. Can you tell us what you know about Dr. Kit Green and his scientific study of the exposures on humans to this radiation?
All I can say is that the reason why you can call me the guy is because the Rendlesham incident's in public domain. So there's been a lot of other stuff, according to them, that's happened. It's not made the light of day publicly. There has been a little bit of talk about what happened at Skinwalker, but that's not come from officially from the government. And in my incident, the government acknowledged the incident took place because of the simple fact that they had to when the memo got released. So they acknowledged that something took place, something happened. I was able to work with some very good people to prove that while I was out there, I was injured during the event. So this obviously is an attention getter for people like Green and stuff because they're not just looking at studying it and understanding it, most likely for weaponization, to move it forward for weaponization, but they're using it to also get the funding they need to further their study and obviously making some kind
Right.
of weapon out of this. So ultimately, the reason why I'm the face of this more than maybe somebody else is simply in the first part is that they can't deny the incident took place, and you can't deny that the Air Force acknowledged the incident took place, and you can't deny that I've received compensation for being injured in the line of duty during the event. And so that makes me more important in that aspect. But as far as how much it injured me or why they're trying to totally understand it, for with me or others, is kind of still in the dark because you can never get a straight answer from them.
Right.
That,
Right.
that opens up that opens up well, just for me, I'm gonna say, the reason that I said it about you is because you are the most solid witness from that
Right.
UAP event
Right.
that that I know. You're one of my best friends, and I've come to know you very well over the years, and you're just your testimony is beyond reproach. You are as
Right.
solid as a rock. Your story has never changed. You kept to the mission of trying to find out what happened to you and those that you worked with and around those that around you. At Rendlesham Bentwaters in 1980, and you stayed the course. There's never been any additional bullshit that jumps up here and there and everywhere, like with so many others over the course of time. You gave it to us, and you gave it to us on the level, and that I love about you and truly appreciate about you. But a big part of the revelation of a revelation about your truth came from the Condon report. James, I want to jump over to you real quick. What was the purpose? So many of us that are deep into this already know this, but I want to bring this question to those out there who are just now coming onto this or just now learning about these aspects of what was going on over there in the UK with the study of non-ionizing radiation and its effects on human beings. What
Mm.
was the Condon report?
Well, to cut it rather short, really, Project Condign was wrapped up in a ball that was basically a study to study to examine a potential UAP, try to understand its nature, its effects, and whether or not the Ministry of Defence could actually weaponise some of the aspects of the UAP. This is probably where John kind of came against a brick wall in a previous episode, I believe, whereby he was denied, any more correspondence towards, trying to verify if there was any kind of, any unclassified material that could pertain to any of this. But I say, John will tell you he hit a bit of a brick wall when it came to this. Um, and when you actually look into the say the injuries, or sorry, the energies they were discussing, And a lot of that has also been kind of confirmed by other people like Paul Devereaux, the frequencies, Massimo Teodorani as well. He's done extensive work on a lot of this UAP. Again, the reason I always go down a plasma route, just to make things clear, is literally it's because obviously I was investigating Rendlesham, and that's what I see, and like a few selected others see as a huge potential in what some of the effects were that people were actually seeing. Obviously, I've got views on other things as well. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not completely obsessed with plasma. But yeah, to actually see an actual a Ministry of Defence document looking at exactly what Andrew Pike, myself, and others have been candidly trying to investigate. To see the way it was written in there was very eye opening, in my opinion. It's worth a read, as I said. It's worth a read. If anyone gets a chance, it's a long read. If anyone can get the chance to read it, please do, because it's very, very interesting indeed.
For me, it was an eye-opener because I think it reveals a hidden truth. I think it reveals a link that the MOD were looking at UAP, whatever they are, as a natural phenomenon, as an alien force, as a weapon, right back to the end of World War II. I mean, I think that's what the report, for the first time, reveals to me. And so it opens the door into realizing that there's people behind the scenes working on all of this. And as we continually use the brilliant word, weaponizing it as a potential, whatever it is. If it's an alien force, if it's a natural force, if it's a man-made force, the Condign report really said that the MOD are taking it seriously and have taken it seriously for years.
And there's no question about it.
Right.
And, driving the clock back really for me is the one thing that levels my brain back to ground zero where it needs to be. Not taking anything from Clyde Lewis. I love you, Clyde. But ground zero is where, things were in the sky, reported in the sky, seen in the sky. Long before all of this amazing technology that we have in our possession today. And a part of that discussion is that is probably why they want to covet this so closely to the vest and not let anyone know about it. It's not that humanity can't necessarily handle it. And the breakdown of social structures worldwide and everyone just going into social and global collapse. Society is stronger than that, more resilient than that, I think. And I'm looking at the clock, and we're up against it. But there was another portion of this show I wanted to touch on with John. Just lastly, John, we talked about John Alexander. We have conversations with him about him, and how he's up to the throat, in the know with all of this, and what are your thoughts about his research into time dilation being maybe used as a weapon? What are your thoughts on that, really quickly?
Well, I mean, if you can alter the state of time, you can do a lot with it, including plasmas. But I mean, ultimately, Alexander and all these guys are what you use the word true lies. Summing it up simply as this: they give enough information out to get people that hold the purse strings interested, but not enough to damage national security. And then they try to get the money to advance this exotic technology that they're trying to figure out and make it work. So when you see all this going on, to include the Havana syndrome, which we'll go into a different episode, it's interesting that everybody says it's real. People have been injured, but Lou Elizondo has come out and said that you have to look at it involving with UAPs. And one of the biggest reasons I think is simply because it involves EM frequencies. And what has the intelligence agencies done? They've stonewalled UAP stuff. They've also said there's nothing to see with the Havana syndrome. It's not real. There's nothing there to create the effect, and we have to move on because it's things like people have pre-existing conditions or the environment itself has created this. So this is a big involves secret that they're looking at involving plasmas, time dilation, wormholes. Most of that information was given to McCain's committee through the DIA papers. So stand by, folks. There's plenty more to come.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
This can be heavy. It can really tax you, mentally to drive down into the depths of this rabbit hole that we call UAP and the weaponization of it. And I've got to be honest, in over 30 years of looking into this, it started out as a hobby and became a passion and then became my life's work up to a great point from a media aspect and trying to create platforms and delivery of intelligent conversation for people to chew on, for critical thinkers to take away and work on themselves. Never to try to indoctrinate or convince people that what we're saying is the what you need to believe. It's not about that. It's about engaging those gears in your mind out there. That we do all this work in an open forum because so many people don't. There are just a fraction of people that really are doing the solid work and the strong work with real torque behind what they're doing in the public sphere, in the public eye. Man, we lose family members, we lose close friends when, doing this. It's not, people still point at you and call you nuts. People still, write you off as the relative that they love, but they hate to see coming. But at the end of the day, we all have a passion for this subject because we all believe that it is something that we really, really, really find profound and world changing. And that reality for so many can be found in faith and in a book or a Bible or, a cross or a star or, we could go on and on about how human beings want to trust something, outside themselves. And this game that we're playing, we're a part of that. We put ourselves in a place that honestly we can participate in the development of the outcome of the good or the bad or the ugly, whatever it is that is at the end of this road. But so many before us have come and done their part, and so many of us are doing it now, and so many of us will be doing it when we're gone, when all of us are gone. But hopefully, the time that you spend with all of us is time well spent. And we've come up with a new schedule. I want to let everybody know, that Professor Simon, he's poking us. I got to be honest. I'm so sorry, you guys, that we've our schedule has kind of waned a little bit. Did a short stint in the hospital. A lot of but I'm okay. I'm good. I'm recovering, and everything's coming back to normal. But James, thank you so much for all the hard work you're doing and everything that you contribute to this team. Professor Simon, you have been a true blessing to this group. Thank you so much for the hard work you do, for your dedication to what you do on your channel, youtube.com at Professor Simon. Everybody go check him out that sees us. There's going to be a lot more that sees him and comes over here than it won't, because he's just hurdled 100,000 subscribers. Congratulations again, Professor. That's a true. Have you got your plaque yet?
It's coming on Monday.
Good. Well, we want to see you present it in the
next hold it up.
We'll have to see it. And then, of course, John, for your courage, your professionalism, your dedication, and your honesty, and your loyalty to the reality of what is going on around us, and how you've been steadfast all this time, with so many people pulling at you and torquing at you and trying to pick your brain for what you know, and to try to change your mind about what you know, or create things that may or may not be a reality. You've held strong, and you've got to keep taking good care of yourself, because we've got to have you with us. I'm trying to do the same thing, so let's keep this team going. Everybody hang with us. We're going to be a more solid schedule in the coming weeks. So, we'll be turning these shows out more on the regular, and we've got so much more content coming to you. Guys, thank you so much. I'm going to close the show out, on the note that everyone, please remember that it's all about the search for the truth in something that we feel is a profound reality that we are all facing. And, whether we get it, like I said, in our lifetime or the next, it's a diligent effort on our part to make sure that the story is as well researched and delivered to you as we can get it. So take what you learn here or what you hear here and, go off and do your own research. When you find things, when you come across things that you think might help the program and help us move the ball down the field, reach out to me anytime. Okay. You can find me on all our social media platforms. You can find John on social media platforms, Professor Simon and James, also at Phenomenon Radio on Facebook. You guys are the greatest sleuths on earth, and thank you for watching. Join us over, if you haven't already, like and subscribe us, and join us over on the YouTube channel. If you're watching us here at youtube.com at Phenomenon Radio, you can go over to Professor Simons at youtube.com at Professor Simons. And then, of course, find us on social media, Phenomenon Radio. Thank you all for joining us. Until next time, everybody have a great night and a great weekend. Good night, everybody.